Welcome to the Capital Raising Show. I'm your host, Tim Mai. Today, I have Gino Barbaro on the line with us. Gino is an amazing real estate investor, businessman, entrepreneur. Not only has he built a portfolio of over 1,900 multifamily units and over $225 million asset under management, he has also taught thousands of other real estate investors, about multifamily, and his group of students have done well over 53,000 units and over $4 billion in deal flow, deal volume. And Gino and his partner Jake has been real estate educators for a long time. So Gino also has written 3 books, best-selling books: The Wheelbarrow Profits, The Honeybee and Family, and Food and Fires. Mm-hmm. And Gene currently resides in the St. Augustine, Florida, with his beautiful wife Julia, and there's 6 children. That's a lot, Gino. How do you do it all, sir?
You marry up. Gino. You're at the right partner. Just like when you guys are raising deals, you need to have the right partner. And she's amazing. My wife stays home, homeschools them, and just takes care of the family. And to start out, family life and business life are pretty much the same thing. You need core values in business. You need core values in family. And for me, it's been an amazing journey. I love it because my kids are, investing in the deals with me. They come to the events. They see the life of an entrepreneur. So for me, it's been invigorating. It's been a great journey for me. So thanks for having me on, Tim. I appreciate it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. I'm really honored that you're coming on the show with us. I know you have a ton of experience when it comes to raising capital, and so really honored to have you on. I'd love to start with, if you can share with us, how did you get into this multifamily commercial real estate space?
Sure, I'll give the 30-second overview. I mean, I got out of college a long time ago, 1992. I don't know who's older than me on the show, but 92 is when I graduated college. I went to work in a cubicle for a year, left that job, and got into the restaurant space, believe it or not. My dad was a chef. He was an immigrant from Italy, and that's how I got Family Food in the Fryers. I ended up writing a cookbook about 10 years ago. I was in the restaurant business for a good 15 years. 2008 comes, I meet Jake. I'm working harder, making less. I need to do something. I had already crapped out on a mobile home park deal. I had already crapped out on a mixed use deal. I said, time out. What do I need to do? And I saw one of your questions. How did I get into multifamily? It was very easy. I had a job already. I didn't want to fix and flip. So I said, multifamily is the natural progression. So I started my education in 2008, spent a ton of money. I look at it as investing a ton of money in mentors now. Met Jake in 2009. Jake moves down to Knoxville, Tennessee in 2011. We partner up in 2011. I'm the one who taught him everything. I still keep saying that. And it's really funny because he didn't know anything about the real estate space. He was a pharmaceutical rep, but he had the desire and he had the work ethic, and we had values that really aligned really, really well. And when you guys are raising capital, it is about values-based decision-making, whether it's with your investors who are ultimately your partners, or other sponsors or other syndicators or other people on your team. So for me and Jake, we aligned really well. We wanted to have multifamily as the vehicle. I didn't want self-storage. I didn't want land. We just focused on multifamily. We tried to become experts. And I wouldn't say that I'm not an amazing investor. I'm not an amazing in really any facet of my life. I just work hard. I was endowed with not being that smart, to be completely honest with you, but not being very intelligent. I had to focus on working really hard and educating myself and preparing myself. And that's what I did for those 2 or 3 years before I met Jake. Opportunity came to meet him. It took us 18 months to find that very first deal. And for us, it was not starting out the syndication route, because in 2013, there was very little money out there. Consumer sentiment sucked. There were tons of deals. There was just no money. So we started buying deals on our own. We started refinancing the deals. Fast forward to today, we own about 1,700 units. We only have one syndication left. The vast majority of them is our portfolio. We've been able to refi over $25 million from the portfolio and continue to scale up. So our assets are around $225 million right now. And more importantly, it's the Jake and Gino community. Am I an expert on raising capital? I don't know, but the student base has raised well in excess of $300 million. They've closed over 50,000 units. And some of the things that we teach them about brand, about the hook, about syndicating right. There's so many aspects to capital raising, about having a business plan, a buy right strategy, whatever that is, that all leads into capital raising. And for me, it's exciting to be on here because you have so many qualified guests on here. There's so many people that have amazing resumes on here that have different backgrounds. But I think the one thing that we can all agree on is when you're raising capital, you need need to provide value for that other person, right? You're not asking them for money. You're trying to offer them an opportunity. And if you can create your whatever pitch or opportunity that way, I think that's what we need to lead with, Tim.
I agree. And that's one of the things I look forward to learning from you today is that not only your own experience of capital raising, but the collective experience that you have seen what works well out there with your student base as well, of how they've been able to raise all of this money. So when you first started, did you hire a mentor? Did you attend events, or how did you learn this craft?
So for me, in 2008, I ended up hiring a mentor, Rich Dad, Poor Dad coaching. I even had somebody out there, some of you out there know the Craig Haskell. I had Craig Haskell as a mentor. He passed away a couple of years ago, the Value Hound Academy. He was actually a very important part of my life because on our third deal, I utilized all his steps, his credibility book, his underwriting templates and all. And for me, having that coaching allowed me and Jake to get that third deal. And I wouldn't be where I am right now without coaching. I actually ended up becoming a life coach as well, because I think coaching and asking the right questions is so important, and looking at the coaching. And then also for scaling up companies, we did something called Scaling Up with Vern Harnish's group. And we also use Traction with Gino Wickman. And it's amazing. I coach with them, then I end up podcasting them and interviewing my mentors as well. So that's been really exciting to be able to utilize their programs, because we're not born as natural born salespeople. We're not born knowing how to scale a company or how to buy a multifamily. It's just not something that we're not learned. We have to learn these skills. And for me, I've invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in that education, but it's also allowed me to actually learn the skill. And ultimately now I'm teaching it as well.
Right. And I'm curious as to how you went into the teaching business. What made you decide to go that route?
October of 2015, I decided to leave the restaurant during the week. So I'm like, my brother Mark was running the business. I'm like, I'm not working at the restaurant anymore. Monday through Friday, I'm going to do the real estate. And then Saturday, Sunday, I'll come work at the restaurant. In March of 2016, I decided to leave full-time, went to the real estate full-time, and I ended up moving to Florida. And I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. And I remember in June of 2017, I moved to Florida and everyone's telling me Jacksonville's hot. Grant Cardone, have him on a podcast. No one's buying deals in Jacksonville. And I listened to the people in the market who lived here. And unfortunately, I did that. Assets were 80 a door, 85 a door. Now assets in Jacksonville are 200 a door. So I didn't buy any assets. In the meantime, I said, Jake, I can't help you with the property management because you're up in Knoxville. What do we do? So we ended up saying, let's start the education company. It's fun. Let's start a podcast. Let's start writing books. And it became a passion project for me. And from there, what I learned was when you do something in life, you learn it and then you do it and then you ultimately teach it. And when you become a teacher, you learn so much because you're forced to go to events. I was at MFINCon this past weekend, learned a ton of stuff, met up with some amazing investors, and it pushes you to stay relevant. It pushes you to learn the content and it pushes you to make new connections. So for me, teaching it's been inspiring. And for me, it's, when Tony Robbins talks about the 6 basic human needs, those first 4 are fundamental. Number 5 and number 6 is growth and contribution. And I wanted to leave an impact. I want to teach my children about legacy wealth and about generational wealth, but also legacy skills. I want to teach my kids all about financial freedom. I want to teach them about money. And how do you do that? Well, by teaching others and being a role model to them. So for me, that the whole education has been great. I've met so many new friends. And like I said, when I look back on my life 10, 20, 30 years from now, I want to be able to say, man, 300 people left their W-2 jobs because of Jake and Gino. We raised $7 billion from this entity or whatever. That's what I want to leave as a legacy. So that's why I started pursuing it. And it's just been a passion project for me for the last 5 years.
That's awesome. I love that. What would you say is the amount that you and Jake have raised for your own deals? And then what would you say if you have to give it a rough guesstimate amount of how much your students have raised?
So for us, Jake and I have only done 3 syndications. We've only raised about $12 million. That's all we've done. We've been able to refi and pull money up, but our students, well in excess of $300 million. I'm actually creating a spreadsheet to document all of the raises. And one thing that I see that when students become successful in raising money is they create a brand. I don't know if you're going to touch upon this right now, but creating a brand, whether it's the Jake and Gino brand. On our very first syndication, we raised $3 million in 24 hours because we already had a live event. We had already the books out. We had the podcast out, and we were already an entity out known in the space. And we already had education students that were on our lists. we were able to podcast Alex Hormozy a couple of weeks ago. I don't know how many of you out there by show of hands know Alex Hormozy. I mean, talk about brand. And the amazing thing that Alex Hormozy said on the podcast was he was depressed when he realized that Kylie Jenner became a billionaire. And why was he depressed? Because he was always focusing on advertising and doing all these click funnels when he said brand is the biggest ROI that you can have. And he wasn't depressed that she hit it. He was depressed that he's 31 years old. She's 20 or 21. He's like, what the hell have I been doing these last? I'm like, Alex, you're 31, bro. You're way ahead of the game. Don't worry about it. But that brand for the long term is what is the biggest ROI. And I think when you're raising capital, it's really important to create your own brand. Like for me, I'm learning how to sing opera. So I want to become the multifamily maestro. That's what I want to do. And I want to get on stage. I want to rip a little opera. You want to create a feeling, a sensation for people out there, because it's not what you say to them. It's how you make them feel. And your brand should have a feel. The Jake and Gino brand, I want it to have a family feel. We want to have people in our community that are all about family, that have those values. And how do you do that? It's by creating that brand. And when Alex said that to me, I'm like, wow. And he's the kind of guy that is not going to knock Kylie down. What he's going to do is what you guys are all doing on the show. How did she do it? How do I figure that? So that's what he's working on. And I think that brand is so important and we can all cultivate it. This is not brand of 20 and 30 years ago when you're seeing Coca-Cola and Pepsi. This is the Roderick brand. This is the Dylan brand. We all have our own brands and we can create our own destinies by creating our brands.
I love it. Yeah, let's definitely dive into that. However, I'd like to know what are some of the challenges that you went through on your very first capital raising, and then how does the branding plays into solving those challenges, or what is the how would you do it differently now with that?
Well, for me, I would have all of my ducks in a row a lot sooner. We didn't have a webinar. The timeline moves so quickly on your first raise, and for us, not having the investor scripts, not having the webinar done, not having the PPM in time. I mean, like I said, we were fortunate because we raised it so quickly and not really thinking about it as an opportunity. For me, it's like, oh, should I let them invest? No, this is a damn good deal. Let's create some scarcity. Let's create some desire. And the other part about it is I didn't look at it as a sales opportunity. What we were trying to do is we felt as if we were asking them for money. And what we do at Jake and Gino, we utilize something called same side selling. And it's something that Ian Altman created. And it's what he talks about with this acronym. It's called FIT. It's finding impact together. And you really need to find investors that are going to look at what you're trying to do and see if it's valuable for them. So I know in one of your questions, you had asked, what is your time horizon for your investors? Well, right now, if and when we're going to start raising again for these larger deals, we want to have investors who have a long-term time horizon. So if an investor wants his money back in 24 months, it's not going to be a really good fit for me or for them. So when you're looking at raising capital or creating a brand, make sure that the other person that you're offering the opportunity to has impact. You can find that impact together. If somebody wants to join our community, Jake and Gino, they don't have capital, they don't have the right mindset. That's not really a good fit for the both of us. So we'll just say, hey, you know what? Love you. Here's some resources. Do you know anybody who this would be really worth it? That's one of the things I think with capital raising. And I think the other thing was the deal was too small. We should have gone for a bigger deal, to be honest with you. It was only a $6 million deal. It was only a $2.5 million raise. So I wish we had gotten a bigger deal. And I think the last thing is having all of your team members just all lined up, making sure that you have the syndication attorney, the CPA. I should have probably had a portal for investors. We didn't have one at the time. We ended up getting CrowdStreet, I think, at the time, and now we're a cash flow portal. Having that investor portal for us was really, really important because you want it to look professional. I mean, this is your brand once again. You don't want to send out Google Docs, Google Sheets. If this is going to be your long-term commitment, commit on the front end. What is it going to look like 3 or 4 years from now, your brand, and start reverse engineering that and start doing that today. Because every time somebody sees that name, sees your brand, they're going to envision that. And you want to really start out on a good foot in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. That makes a lot of sense. Now, so let's talk about the different components of brand. Obviously, for you, you look at your brand, the Jake and Gino community. I noticed you use the word community a lot. So community is a big part of your brand. What are the other major components of your brand?
That's a great question. When you think of brand, we had interviewed an expert on it, and I remember what he said. It was actually Andrew Cord on the podcast. If there's one word that you want your brand to represent. His was experience. So when you go to his offices, you walk in, there's just an experience. For me, that one word is family. And I think the other thing that you need to do as a brand, on our podcast, we also podcasted, who wrote the presentation secrets of Steve Jobs? What was his name? I don't remember what his name is, but on that podcast, it was enlightening what he said to me. He says, take your company and rip it down to one or two sentences of what you do. Every company does this, whether it's Google, whether it's Apple, and it doesn't matter how complex the problem you're solving. At Jake and Gino, it took me a little while. And what our slogan is, or whatever you want to call it, is we create multifamily entrepreneurs. That's what we do at the company. And how do we do that? Different story. We teach people how to buy assets, but our USP, our unique selling proposition, is we teach people how to manage assets. It's sexy to buy the deal, and it's real sexy to finance the deal, but nobody wants to teach you how to manage the deal. And that's what we do. And how do you do that? By creating a multifamily entrepreneur, by creating them how to actually start a business, the cadence of accountability, the business plan, all the frames you need to set up. And that's really, really important. So when you're out there creating your brand, what is it? If you're a syndicator, maybe it's very simple. I retire people. I love that because it tells you exactly what you do. You're getting money and you're investing money for other people. Now, obviously, you rip that down, but what is your brand? What do you want it to feel? What are the touch points? And for me, we have these internal events. I want everyone to see my family there. We have 4 different podcasts weekly. I have a show with my wife. It's called the Jake and Gino Show. We don't talk about real estate. I wish we did. She hates real estate. I love real estate. And we're on there battling between husband and wife. She brings in the family, I bring in the business, but that's what I want that feel. That's what I want to fulfill to students. We've written children's books. We have 2 children's books out there. What does that have to do with multifamily? It has to do with the overall feel of the brand. We have a company called 100-Year Real Estate Investor. Long-termism. We also promote long-termism in our brand. We're actually selling whole life insurance to be able to take that money out of your cash value and put it into real estate assets. And also, ultimately, we have the Movers and Shakers podcast, where we're podcasting our students and showing our student successes. So the overall feel of the brand is the content that we put out as well, and how to make it relevant and how to actually teach and help our students and have those resources that we can share with people who even aren't in our community to bring them into the Jake and Gino community.
I love it. That's awesome. I know that's like a really quick, but so powerful.
I'm trying. Yes.
I love it.
It's hard to jam it all in there. I try to put 5 pounds in a 3-pound bag, but sometimes, because brand's a lot of fun. I mean, we could talk about brand all day. And when you turn something on, you're being bombarded every day by millions and millions of messages. How do you cut through the noise? Right. It's really hard because our attention spans have gotten a lot shorter. We're doing 45-second, try to do a 45-second video on interest rates. And it's really impossible, but it's not what I want. It's what the market wants. So if I want to be, reticent and say I'm an old timer, I can't do it that way. Well, guess what? I'm not going to be relevant and I'm not going to be able to share my message. So there's so many different mediums that we can utilize to do that. So figure out what you want your message to be, and then figure out how to, send that message out to the masses.
That's awesome. All right. So along with branding is the type of customers you want to attract. So who is your ideal target that you go after?
So for us on the education side, real quick, it's people who have the capital, who have the right mindset. It's about growth mindset. It's about people who are coachable. It's about people who want to become entrepreneurs and who want to leave their W-2 job. Now, for investors, when we started out, we didn't have anybody who had a pulse, anyone who had 50 grand to throw in the deal. And after your first deal, you're like, it's not really a good criteria there, And when you have an investor call you up and in the same sentence say, I'm going to sue you because the K1s are wrong. And they go, oh, wait, the K1s are good. When's your next deal coming out? Well, that person maybe shouldn't be in our next investment. And I'm sure that's happened to a lot of people listening to this call. So for us, it's really to have investors who align with our goals, align with our business plan, align with the assets that we're actually going out there and investing, and who have that long-term mindset, because we don't want to sell these deals. If we can buy these deals and refi these deals in 3 or 4 years, I don't want to replace and send that capital back to the investor. I want to keep the deal. You know how hard it is to find a deal that cash flows? I want to have an investor who knows that the wealth mindset is created by, owning these assets. Rich people sell assets. Wealthy people own and keep the assets. And our first deal in 2013, rents were $350 for a 1-bedroom. That same deal today, which I still own, which has put 2 of my kids through college so far, rents are $995 plus rubs. So can you see what's happened that one little 25-unit deal, the wealth that's been created from that? If I can tell my investors that long-term time horizon, if they have that, then we're a great fit. If not, it's okay. No harm, no foul. Do you have anybody else who'd like to invest in our deals?
Right. That's awesome. And so what channels of marketing do you use to find that, that long-term investor?
For us, it's the podcast first and foremost. We've got over 100,000 downloads a month. I mean, we started out 5 years ago. I didn't even know what a podcast was when I first started out. I'm not gonna lie to you. Jake's like, let's start a podcast. I'm like, okay, what's a podcast? We started out just like everybody else. It wasn't as crowded as it is now. But the mistake that I made when we started the podcast was we were doing it for fun. If you're going to start a podcast nowadays, make it niche. Understand what you're trying to do. Are you trying to learn? Are you trying to teach? Are you trying to raise capital? Is this podcast for dentists or for doctors or for attorneys? Whatever that's for. For us, we just started out for multifamily. There weren't that many multifamily podcasts when we started out. So the podcast is a great way. And we've just been utilizing Instagram the last couple of months, these short videos, just for them to get a taste of what's going on. And then YouTube ultimately is just another amazing platform to actually go out there and shoot these short form videos and share your story. Because I think video is powerful. And I think with Jake and myself having different dynamics and being on camera is really, really, really powerful. And then ultimately, we write books. We've written 5 or 6 books. We've written a couple with our coaches, getting constant content out there, putting it out there. And you don't have to do this all. What do you like to do best? Do you like to write articles? Do you like to be in front of a camera? Do you like to do audio? Just pick one when you're starting, get really good at it, and just focus on that one. And then ultimately you can continue to scale the mediums that you're using.
Right. So, obviously things like podcasts, and podcasts a little bit easier that you can do with, not having a lot of experience, because you can do interview like what I'm doing with you, right? Books require you to have, I guess you can do interview into books as well. But what are some of the other ways that you have found worked really well to establish some, your trust and credibility in the marketplace?
The first thing I would say is everyone on this call, if you haven't done Toastmasters, you should all join up and do a Toastmasters to get rid of the uhs and the ums, to be able to think quickly on your feet, to be able to structure a presentation. I think that's really, really important and overlooked. And I'm constantly trying to work on that skill set. When I was in college and after I graduated, I thought communications was the biggest joke of a major. But ultimately, it's probably the most important thing to convey a message to somebody. I think we need to really focus on that. And I even forgot what your message was, because I just dumped that Toastmasters just jumped into my mind thinking about that's so important to create that message and to craft that message. And I think the other thing I'd like to really mention about that is we did a podcast with Oren Klaff. And he wrote the book, Pitch Anything. I don't know how many of you out there read the book or listened to the book. We've done the podcast. Go listen to him. He talks about the brain. And this is important when we're pitching ideas. He talks about the croc brain, the midbrain, and the neocortex. Now, most of us, when we're having a conversation, the first part of our brain that gets activated is our croc brain. That brain is the primitive brain. It sees movement, it sees something interesting. I'm pitching to Tim. I'm pitching from my neocortex, which is the high part of my brain, to Tim's croc brain. So if I jump on Tim and I say, hey, Tim, I got an 8% pref, 18 IRR, you're going to make sure. Tim's going to be like, hold on a second. I don't know what you're talking about. But if I tell Tim, hey, basic human need, food, clothing, apartments, awesome skill set. You're going to save a ton of money on taxes. All of a sudden, I'm hitting his croc brain, and he's allowing me to get into that pitch. I think if you start doing that and creating the story, you need all to create stories for yourselves. You're all amazing people. Everyone has something unique about themselves. And until you put that down on paper and you practice your stories, it's really important. I've got 6 kids. I'm an amazing chef. I can sing opera. I own 1,500 units. These are all things that are unique to myself. Find out what's unique to yourself. Create 2 stories. Create your founder story, why you got into multifamily or why you got into whatever you're doing, and then create your purpose story. For me, it was real simple. I hated the job. It was a rat race for me. Every week I'd go to work. And Sunday, the restaurant would pay me. The next week, some weeks I made money. Some weeks I didn't make money. I had 6 kids. Everyone's telling me how you're going to pay for weddings, how you're going to pay for college. That pissed me off. So I needed an outlet. I need to find something to make money. That's my founder story. That's the reason, or my purpose story. Everyone needs to have that, and create a storyboard, 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 bullet points, and have that story memorized. And every time you speak to somebody or you go on a podcast, it comes up to you. It's not scripted. It's natural. So create the story, because people want to know about you before they know about the deal. They don't really care about day pref. They really care, is Tim going to be a steward of my money? Does Tim care about me? Can I trust Tim? And is he worried about me? That's what they're worried about. And if you can get over that barrier with the croc brain, then you get to his midbrain and go, okay, this sounds okay. Let me hear a little bit more. But until you penetrate that primitive part of his brain, everything you're saying to him is BS, 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 because we hear it every day. I was going for a walk the other day and looked down, and a snake was right there. So that's how the primitive brain works. It looks for movement. It looks for something unique, something different out there. That's why everyone needs a hook. You need to have a hook when you get on, because people have a really short time frame, and your croc brain is trying to save yourself from wasting that energy. So it's saying, what's different with Tim? What's different with Gino? What's different with Sharir? That's what they want to know, what's different. Then when they find out what's different, then they start paying attention. And then ultimately we learn in stories. Great. IRR, that is all awesome. You need to know the numbers. You need to know what is in the deal. But if you don't get through that first part, everything else is completely lost and completely wasted. We did that pre-zone in Charlotte last week, and I had that epiphany. We have 12 slides. Each slide should have at least 1 or 2 stories. And at the end of the pre-zone, I shot out a little opera, sang a little bit, got a great round of applause. You make them feel good. They'll remember that, and then they'll go back and they'll remember what you actually said because they paid attention to it, and trying to make it relevant to you. And I think the last thing I'd say, Tim, is when you're doing all of this, try not to be the hero in the story. Try to be the guide. I mean, most of you, when you're listening to a podcast and you hear somebody on a podcast and it's their show, but all it is about them, about them, and it's not about the guest, we get turned off by that. Be the guide as a syndicator, be the guide as the operator, and let the person you're speaking to, the hero, ask them questions, really be genuinely interested in what they have to say and listen to them. And then you're there guiding them. People don't care that I've closed 1,500 units, that I have $225 million in assets under management. What they really care is, how can you help me solve this problem? How can you get me out of my job? That's what you need to do. That's why you need to be the guide and listening to them. And everyone you interact with, they're the hero. They're the person you should be putting emphasis on.
I love it. That's awesome. And then, I know you put out a ton of content, obviously, with your podcast and everything. What are some other things that you do to stay in contact with and continue to maintain that relationship with, especially the passive investors?
So behind me, I've got November 5th and 6th. We're going to be in Orlando. It's MM5. You need to go to events. We have 6 or 7 internal boot camps for our community, but we go to a bunch of events as well. And I think if you're a syndicator, my brother did this beautifully last month. He had about 120 people he had up in Jacksonville. He had all his passive investors come at an event. I think he might have spent 10 or 12 or 15 grand for the whole event entirely. It was great. It was at the country club. Get people together, because you're trying to create a community of investors. If you can create a community of investors, they're your advocates. And I mean, we've done so many podcasts on this, as far as Joey Coleman and all the other guys who are talking about that customer experience. The gentleman who wrote the book for the Ritz-Carlton, I forgot, his name is Horst Schultz. He wrote another book on customer service. And that's what you're trying to create as a syndicator. You're trying to create that customer experience. And how do you do that? Thinking about that and having 3 or 4 of your investors who are advocates, they'll raise all the money in the world for you. That's all you need. So try to think of your business as one where you're trying to create that customer experience for your investors. And that's what I'm trying to do with the Jake and Gino community as well. But go to these events, go out to these events and these mastermind groups, what we're doing right now. I think those are all really important to stay top of mind.
All right, awesome. And I know that a lot of operators use newsletters, and some even use direct mail newsletters. Have you found that to be very effective?
Newsletters is another thing where people get something in an inbox. For me, we have a private Facebook group. So I use a private Facebook group for our community to translate, to get information out. I also do a weekly lesson on Mondays at 12 o'clock. We have a bunch of students who are on our weekly lesson, do different topics. what we were doing during the pandemic that worked really well with our syndication company, on every Friday from 12 to 2, we'd have open hours, call for 2 hours. We were tracking daily. You remember those 2 years ago when everyone's saying no one's going to pay rent? So we had daily tracking of collections. We were trying to be as transparent as possible and open as possible because people were afraid. They didn't know what was happening. So for us, we were doing that. And also we're doing end of day huddles with our team as well. So trying to get out and have that open line of communication is really, really important in this. I don't want to say this part of the cycle, but that's just the way it is with employees and with investors now. There's a fine line between badgering them, but letting them know that you're there. And if you have any questions and if something's going wrong in a deal, let them know. Don't bury your head in the sand. Get out in front of it, and they'll have a lot of respect for you. Because listen, it's been a tough environment for the last couple of years for a lot of multifamily operators. If you're out there telling them, hey, there's no prefs this quarter because of this, I think they'll understand. They see the job numbers, they see the inflation, they see the stuff that's going on. So being open and honest, if that's part of your brand, which it should be, I mean, that's just something really easy you can do.
That's awesome. And then I know you said that you started out, you specifically wanted to niche into multifamily. Can you share with us how you went about making that decision?
Oh, you mean going into multifamily full time?
Correct. Specifically targeting multifamily assets.
That's a great question. For me, it was a little bit of ignorance. I failed at mobile home parks, not because of the mobile home park, because of me. I failed because I bought something in New York. It was a strip mall, and it wasn't because of the asset. It was just because of me. And then it dawned on me, I had a fourplex. I'm like, there's really not a lot of work going into managing 4 units, every month, couple hours a month, whereas at the restaurant, I'm working 60 hours a week. And I'm like, I love the tax benefits here. I love the ability to provide affordable housing. I love that ability to be able to get in with the residents and solve those problems. And I saw that as a vehicle for me, where we could buy 25 units on our first deal, get a resident manager, and still work full time. And then 3 months later, we bought a 36 unit. So we've got 60 units within the first 3 months of our first property. 6 months later, we bought 136 units. So at the end of a year, we've got 200 units. We're like, oh, wow, I love this because we can actually hire property management. We can actually start scaling up. And then the last 6 months, we've been buying scattered sites. So we've just been putting them together with our other large properties, and it's given us those economies of scale. But for me, early on, I didn't understand the power of multifamily when it came to becoming an entrepreneur and being scalable. I just didn't know that. I didn't understand the multiple streams of revenue. We wrote the Honeybee because of that, because of the multiple streams of revenue, whether it's our education company, our property management company, the whole life insurance, the syndication company, and now we're doing development. We've bought 2 large tracts of land where we're going to start building build to rent. So that's all from a little 25 unit property that we've been able to scale out in the last 10 years. And that's what multifamily has allowed me to do. Now, if I went into single family homes, would I be here? Maybe, maybe not. But I see so many students in Jake and Gino that start out, have 20, 30, 40. We just got 2 gentlemen on. I call them the Bucky boys. I got a Bucky shirt here. That's their brand. They go around, they wear Buckies. And I remember them, Andy and Scott. They have 100 single family homes. God bless them. Amazing. And they're working W-2. They finally came to me and said, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, you know what? You guys are amazing. You've done it. Let's implement some systems and let's start buying assets that are, contiguous instead of buying 100 homes all around this market. So for me, I saw that early on. But then when I noticed that the power to build a business, I mean, how many assets can you invest in where you're investing in the asset, but you're also able to build a business alongside of it? There's not that many. And for me, it was like, this is great. And like I said, ultimately, it is a basic human need. Do you need an office space? Not really. People are living at home. Self-storage down in the Southeast, I think it's much more prevalent down here. I live in Florida. I don't have a basement. And there's so many people moving here that self-storage makes sense here. Retail, I don't think retail is going to be great. Mobile home parks, it's great. It's a smaller niche. They're tearing them down. I don't want to deal with that resident base. So for me, multifamily has so much potential going forward, and there's not enough of it. As you can see, cap rates are not going to go back up for I don't think for the foreseeable future. If people are telling you that, I don't see that, because where's the flow of money going? Are you going to put money in crypto? Good luck with that. Bitcoin's at 20,000. Nobody wants to talk about it when it was 60,000. Now it's 20,000. Now everyone's trying to jump. It's not an asset. It's a speculative play for me. So investing in decades, looking for that cash flow, looking for that principal pay down, being able to build a business through it, being able to scale. I mean, there's so many benefits to the asset class itself.
That's awesome. And have you noticed, I guess, with your investors, if they prefer like not just you, but not just your your deals, but also your students' deals. Have you noticed whether or not the investors, the passive investors, prefer that the operator is niche into one asset type, or does it not matter?
That's a great question. For me, if you could be vertically integrated like we are, it's just it's a layup. I mean, we're the property management company and we're the asset management company. So for us, it's just one less hurdle to overcome. I think you have to be able to have some kind of expertise in the space. And when you're raising capital, and we're in multifamily, I'd like to challenge everybody on this call, even if you're in self-storage, what's your buy right criteria? I think right now in this part of the cycle, we talk about the 3 pillars of real estate, but for us, being clear on what kind of assets we're buying will give you the confidence and will allow your investors to know that, hey, Jake and Gino, 3 hours in Knoxville, we're buying up to 200 units. We're buying 1980s and newer, median income of $50,000. We're buying 2-bedroom townhomes. We love that. Washer, dryer hookups. Be crystal clear on what your criteria is. And that's what's allowed us to, when we find a deal, boom, done. And I think every syndicator out there needs to have their business plan and be able to convey that with their investors. I think everyone here, think about what your criteria is for buying a property. And I just mentioned a couple. You should look at the age of the asset, the location of the asset, the median income of the asset, where it's located, the unit mix. We love 2-bedroom townhomes because they're just larger and they're so much easier to rent, and you get more rent on those. We like looking at properties that have amenities. Washer, dryer, hookups are great in the C space. They're another $50 a month in revenue there. So look at some of that criteria and focus on it. So when you bring a deal to a potential investor, they know, hey, this is good for me as well.
That's awesome. And Gino, so some of the things that you recommended was podcasts, you do books, you do Facebook groups, attend events. What do you teach for the audience listening to take the people that you meet and funnel them into when you're raising money and that, like, preparing them to have the money ready for when you have your deal? What does that look like?
Yeah, this is a shameless plug for Hunter Thompson. I don't know if any of you out there know who Hunter Thompson is. He's got a great program, and he focuses on raising capital, on email automations and funnels and all that. I think that's a good avenue for you guys to look at. But for me, simple CRM, we use Active Campaign and we use Cashflow Portal. Cashflow Portal, I love Perry. Perry Zhang is great. He's an syndicator investor who created a product to solve his problem. So he understands it. He's investing in these deals as well. And it's so relatively inexpensive to utilize that. We use Active Campaign as CRM on the Jake and Gino side for the education, but we also use that as our automations and stuff. And we utilize that for the investor side. But that portal system is important. That is something that we struggled early on. We didn't have one. I mean, crap. Now you have these hello documents, hello doc signs. This makes it so much easier. You have all your K1s on one place. You're able to utilize them. You're able to put your deals up on the platform. That's been for us a game saver. And like I said to you, it's about the brand. When you bring an investor over to there and you're sending them out Excel sheets, it just doesn't exude a lot of confidence. So I think that's something where we really leveled up and really helped out our brand from utilizing that.
Right. Okay. So you try to get everyone to opt in then to your.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you do a podcast, you always want to have what we call a call to action. And for us, the call to action, we don't want to invest. We don't need any more investors. We have plenty of investors on our website, but have the call to action, create a little ebook. What I've got here, I'll hold this little booklet up. The Grant Cardone booklets that he made 5 or 6 years ago. I got the idea. I wrote a 30-page little booklet here, how to share the benefits of multifamily investing. We should all have something like this. This is a business card where you're at an event, give them your little booklet. You're giving them something physical, something they can take back with them, something where you're adding value, and it's about your brand. Have an ebook. Be able to have an opt-in with a website. And I don't think websites in the beginning need to be that complex. You just want to have a homepage about you, show your credibility, possibly have a one-pager. If you have a one-pager about yourself, about what you do, what your company does. My mentor, Craig Haskell, did something called a credibility book. It's basically a 20 to 25-page business. It's your business plan about why you're investing in a market, what kind of deals you have. If you don't have deals, do case studies. There's case studies of work of what deals you're looking for. What does your business plan look like? Why are you in the market? And if you do have deals, put the deals there, put the credibility of what you've done out there, and have that book for investors, have that book for bankers, have that book for potential partners. It's really important to show your credibility and to outline it to them. But eventually, like I said, if you're just handing them this book, they're not going to really look at it. Tell them get it past that crock brain so they actually look at the book and are able to consume that book.
That's great. Thank you for that. And so now let's switch to talk about the market a little bit. Where do you see the markets going, and what challenges do you see when it comes to capital raising in this upcoming market?
I don't know if there's going to be that many challenges if you're raising capital. I think the deals may be a little tight still. The pref rates maybe 8 and 9. Some operators may not be able to hit those rates. And I think what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is people would buy deals, then after 2 years they flip out. So now it's going to be who's operating these deals, and that's the issue. We're going to see, you're seeing bridge debt and debt itself getting more expensive. So if you underwrote for bridge debt, what's going to happen in the next 12 to 24 months? If you've got to refi out into higher debt, are you able to sustain that? I think that's going to be the challenge there. And as far as capital raises, building the brand, getting your name out there. Do people know who you are? We were in Ryan Serhant's office 2 weeks ago, and he's right behind us. He's going to be speaking at MM5. And to him, his brand is amazing. He sold over $1.5 billion of real estate last year. It's S with the period. Yeah, when you talk, it's amazing. When he talks about that, he's like, you know what? Because we have buy right, manage right, finance right. And he's like, you know what? Your fourth leg is brand right. And that's what you need to do. You need to start creating that brand and get yourself out there, get yourself known. And I know it's uncomfortable because if you go back and listen to our first podcast, maybe our first 20, we sucked. We were awful. And I want to take them off. I don't want anyone to listen to those things, but it's humbling. And it's also a good reminder that when you start something out, you're not good at it, and it's okay. And it's funny. I go back and my kids listened to it last week and they're like, Dad, you weren't that good, were you? I'm like, hey, am I better now? That's the question. Am I getting better every day? That's the question we should all be asking ourselves, because if we're not getting better, we're getting worse. So
that's great. So kind of let's summarize, especially around branding. So if someone has a goal to make it really big in this space, and let's say get to $1 billion asset under management. I'm just using it as a number here, but what are the few steps, I guess, if you can break it down in steps in terms of building this brand now to have that level of success?
So if I had known this previously, I would have done this, but I did it later on. For me, I didn't even mention this, but when we said values-based decision-making, figure out what your values are. I think the next thing is to create the core values for your company. For us, it's people first, make it happen, extreme ownership, unwavering ethics, and growth mindset. That's what our core values are. And that's what we want to build our company around. Our mission statement is really important, to create communities that empower people to become the best version of themselves. That's what we want. And when we're hiring, when we're firing, that's what we're basing it on, all of those values. That's what your brand starts permeating from. And that's when I think our brand and our company took off about 3 years ago. We understood, and that's why the scaling up coaching was important. We understood that. And Jake came from a corporate background. He worked at Glaxo, and he thought those core values were crap because they were somebody else's core values. But when he started his own, he's like, I want my own core values. People first. We'll do anything we can for our community and for our investors. And they're not tenants, they're residents. And they're not units, they're apartment homes. So it's really important to create what values you want for your company and to start living through those values. And then ultimately, like you said, that brand, what type of investor, what's that persona that you want investing alongside you? That's, I think, the other important thing. And as far as branding goes, to continue that branding, be consistent with the branding. Pick one venue, pick one place, because we didn't start out with 5 podcasts. We had 1. And then we grew to the next one. Then we grew to the next one. And as you start scaling up and having those values, you start adding team members on to help you with all of the other stuff. So we didn't have a YouTube channel 5 years ago. We didn't have LinkedIn 5 years ago, but it starts growing as you start adding more layers and more people onto the team.
That's great. Thank you. And what are some, I know you mentioned cash flow portal, active campaign. What are some of your favorite tools and resources?
For us, I mean, in the property management space, there's so many different companies out there, Doorloop, Buildium. We use Appfolio. That was our biggest mistake, not having a property management software. We waited till we were 600 units. I call Jake Mr. Cheapo sometimes because he's looking at the bottom line. And he's like, I'm not paying $1.50 a unit. I'm like, bro, really? And I think that was for us revolutionary. I mean, for us, helping us out huge. We use a product called Kajabi. I'm looking at it right now. Kajabi is something it's a learning management system. So if you're a capital raiser out there, create a little micro course, 5 or 6 videos, put it on a platform like Kajabi and send it out as a freemium. And I mean, you're sending it out, you're adding value to the person who you're investing. And that's how we started out. We started out with these little micro courses and we started creating larger size products. So for us, Kajabi has been amazing. I had mentioned Active Campaign. And I'm going to be honest with you, Google is great. Google Drive, Google Docs, and Google Sheets has been for us life-changing because it's just open source. We use Slack, we use Asana, we use a lot of those different other ones. But I mean, just keep it simple when you're starting out. But you need a CRM, you need a portal for investors. Really, really important.
Thank you. That's a great list for sure. And so Gino, what are you teaching your kids right now? You have 6 of them. What are the ages?
23 to 7.
Wow, that's a big range. What are you teaching them that perhaps is not being taught out there?
So for me, it's really weird because my daughter is 23 years old. She's a Catholic missionary right now, and she's teaching me service. And it's amazing what you learn from your children if you allow it to transpire, because we're always taught that we need to tell our kids what to do. And I learned early on that if you let them grow and you let them make their own decisions, when they become adults, they can make those decisions. And for her, it's really important to grow in her faith and to serve others. And that's what we're all doing here as syndicators. We're out there serving others. So she's always got that service mindset. What I want to teach my kids, a couple of things: personal responsibility. There's no more responsibility in this world anymore. And those of us who are successful are 100% responsibility junkies. Deal goes wrong, it's not the economy's fault. Right? It's our fault. We underwrote it wrong. So to become personally responsible, I want my children to become responsible. And I think the other thing is that instant gratification. My son, when he invested in our first deal, was 15 years old. He had $5,000 in the bank. I said, Mike, he wanted to buy an amp for his guitar. I said, you're not spending 40% of your net worth on an amp. You don't need that. He had the $5,000. He put it in one of our deals. I mean, the deal is done phenomenal. And he's actually, what's amazing about it, he's talking about creative financing now. He's talking about owner draws, economic occupancy, physical occupancy. He's actually done some amazing things with our property management team. And that $5,000 has transitioned into a 6-figure net worth that he's got at age 20. But more importantly, it's the mindset that he's created. Because now when he gets money, he's not looking to buy something. Yeah. He's a producer. He's not a consumer. He's like, Dad, when's the next deal? And Dad, can I borrow money from you? I'm like, Mike, you're not diluting me, bro. Yeah, you use your own money. But those questions, most adults don't understand that topic. So in allowing them to be alongside you, to be part of the journey and not have that instant gratification and delay it. That's something that we need to teach our children, because I always say people with financial intelligence can change the world for the better. And if we can teach our kids personal finance and education and responsibility, you're going to have an amazing relationship with your kids.
I love it. I mean, I love this interview. I mean, you have some amazing wisdom to share with us. I have a last question for you, and that is, what is your biggest goal or passion that you want to achieve now at this time in your life?
I'd love to have more kids, but that's not only up to me. So it's up to the wife. So that goal is pretty much kaput, but maybe adopting. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because I live every day. It feels as if I'm playing with house money right now. I don't really have any goals or aspirations. The only thing I'd say is one of my BHAGs, big hairy audacious goals, would be to have 10,000 people leave their jobs by the year 2030 through Jake and Gino. That's a really big goal for me. And hey, we're 8 years out. We got about 70 students who have left their W-2. So I've got a lot of work to do. So if I'm able to do that, can you imagine the wealth that I've created and the community that I've created? And hey, by the way, some of those students may partner with us. You never know. So just creating that impact for others. And it's so much fun, Tim, to get an email from somebody saying, hey, I left my job, or hey, I just raised $1 million for this deal, or hey, you changed my life. You changed my mindset. Yep. Even if they don't do a deal for the next year, just changing a person's mindset and the way they look at things in life is just inspiring to me. So once you're playing with house money, you sometimes don't think that far ahead, but maybe I should, but it's been a great ride for me the last few years. I have no complaints.
I love it. I love it. And yeah, I mean, your goal of retiring people is an amazing goal. The difference that you make out there. Um, yeah, and I love watching, all the things that you do. And everyone who I have heard talked about you has talked like wonderful stuff. I've never heard one single negative things about you. So it means a lot, right? The impact that you're out there making is huge. And so thank you so much for all that you do and the difference that you make out there. And thank you for doing this interview with us.
I guess the only last thing I would say is I'm trying to elevate the education space, because most of the people out there, when they hear of gurus and it's negative, it's not a really good, and all of us need that at some point in our lives. But if you have the mindset of, oh, he's a guru and he's out there just trying to sell education, I don't want that. I want all the educators out there to be really mindful of what we're doing and what we're putting out there, because people need this education. People need the camaraderie. They need the community. They need the networking. And if their first inclination is to say, these people are just out there trying to scam us, that's not a good feeling. So having that, it means a lot to me. Not having any negative reviews, having a great community means a lot to me. That's what I'm working and striving towards.
That's awesome. And you're definitely there. So